Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rahma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce. And the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we're running a little behind here today. If you tried to get in the chat room and saw it didn't work, I just now got it turned on, so you get a refresh, and then you'll be out there. And we've got Dr. Tim with us and Dr. Michael Ryce. Hello.
And welcome to the show, everybody. We're delighted that you're here. Of course, as we've been doing for some time now, 73 days, I think, we've been celebrating Memorial Day. And our request to each of you is that you consider facing one issue in your life today that you have that involves some form of hostility or fear. Being willing to forgive it. And, of course, when we talk about forgiveness, we're not talking about being willing to let somebody else off the hook because your body's producing hostility or fear. That so-called forgiveness, or that so-called form of forgiveness, which has nothing to do with forgiveness, is kind of like the Trojan horse that keeps people holding on to whatever's inside of them, never removing it, blaming everybody else, but being willing to forgive them, to let them off the hook. So we're going to ask you to stop forgiving people. We're going to ask you to stop letting other people off the hook for what's happening inside of you. We're going to invite you to consider being responsible for what's happening inside of you and knowing that whatever it is, you have the power to change it. And the tool for changing it is the tool of forgiveness. And so if you're not familiar with that conversation and you want to know more about it, we invite you to go to our website, www.whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. The first 3 links will prove absolutely invaluable in your life if you take those tools and put them to work. So that's what we request or invite you to do. When you do that, if you've never been introduced to the idea that forgiveness has got to do with changing what's happening inside of you, you're in for a shock and a very, very pleasant surprise. Because what you're going to have in your hands is a tool with which to change everything that's ever happened to you in your life. That's what we're here to do. We invite you to join us in the process of celebrating Memorial Day. That is, in honoring those who've gone before us, who have suffered the insanity of war, been forced to murder, been murdered, been injured, been maimed, been emotionally traumatized, come home with those emotional traumas, and pass them on to family members, to neighbors, to coworkers. And as we begin to eradicate hostility and fear from the planet, we will eradicate war. Our phone number, if you have a question about the tools we're talking about, if there's some part of that doesn't make sense to you, or if you're doing worksheets and saying, well, gee, I don't understand this stuff, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. And so call us. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are and how your process is going. Jeanie, do we have any callers or anything in the chat room that we need to address? Have we lost Jeanie? I'm concerned we have.
I'm sitting here talking and have my phone on mute, so I guess you didn't hear me.
Okay.
Everybody's just saying hello to each other in the chat room. There's no questions yet, and we have some callers, but they're just listening.
Okay, I think I heard Dr. Tim's voice back there.
Yes,
He is here.
I was going to chime in if Jeanie was off and read what little there is in the chat room. Good morning.
Good morning.
We had our
good afternoon.
We had our group last night. We watched the first half of The Laws of Living, and we had 10 people plus me in the group, and a lively conversation with people trying to wrap their minds around information and ideas for which they did not yet have the brain cells to comprehend.
And not an easy thing to do.
No. So it was a wonderful evening of trying to use different examples and having people give testimonials about how the work is benefiting them, and then trying to come up with real-life examples to help explain the difference between a law and a rule, and the idea that by meshing with the law, by following law, we ensure our happiness, and by ignoring law, we ensure our sadness, fear, anger, and frustration. So it was a wonderful evening.
Awesome. Cool. Very good. Well, that's definitely one of the bottom lines of the idea of law. It comes from the Aramaic. Of course, the kings would like us to believe that law is the rule of a superior. Somebody who carries a big gun runs the show, and you better do what you're told or they're coming to get you. And, of course, the ultimate threat being Creator's going to come and get you and or send you somewhere very hot for a very long time. And that's all human made-up stuff, the stuff about how there's this authority that wants to run your life and you have to do what that authority says. Creator has no such thing going on. It's got nothing whatsoever. In the Aramaic, there's no relationship with that. There's no, Creator demands of you this, or that. It's simply how the eternal forces operate. There's a law called the law of gravity. The law of gravity has no requirement, and whoever initiated the law of gravity has no requirement that you obey the law of gravity. There's nothing to obey. In terms of law, there's nothing to obey. Not to do with obeying. Laws happen. So if you know how gravity happens, you get to live your life in a pretty cool way. You don't go walking out over a cliff and expecting to just keep walking on air. You understand the law of gravity. So you work within its confines. You understand. You have a relationship of knowledge with it. If you're an engineer, understanding the law of gravity, you design airplanes and you fly in machines that are, way heavier than air. And that doesn't happen by defying the law of gravity. It happens by honoring the law of gravity. If we know the laws, we can honor them. If we don't, then at the bottom of the cliff, bones break, People get hurt by avoidable collisions with law because they've been taught that it's about obedience to a superior. And, of course, the superior is some guy who wants to run your life. And we're looking at a totally and completely different game in the Aramaic. So delighted that you're there, Tim. Those folks are so blessed to have you supporting them and teaching as we all learn this process of healing ourselves, each other, and the planet, and recognizing the genius that was presented by a man named Yeshua.
Well, we start out our groups, if I remember to, by talking about how this is not a discussion for philosophical banter or theoretical sparring. This is a set of tools to help improve the quality of my daily life. And again, last evening, one of our members who's been coming for about a year and a half, had to give another testimonial about the tremendous benefit he's seeing in his relationship with his son, because he had a habit of raging and trying to be the domineering father, because that's all he knew from his parents.
That's like the kings with the law.
Yep. And he finally said to his son about 3 or 4 weeks ago, "Look, you're my son, and I love you, and I'm not trying to fight with you, and I just want us to understand and communicate better." And he said the transformation in his son in the past 3 weeks has just blown him away. He said the things his son now does and takes initiative for and plans out and does proactively, that previously the father would be screaming at him for weeks trying to get him to do one of those things. He said it's just amazing, the change when he moved from his anger and fear into a space of love for his son, how it's transformed the relationship.
Very cool.
I thanked him for the testimonial and backing up what I had just said about how this is really not about theory. This is about application of practical tools to improve my life. So that's how we began the group last night, and it just got better from there.
Very cool. Well, I'm looking forward to getting to Chicago, and I thank you for the invitation to come and stay with you when I'm there. Looking forward to that. I'm sure that we'll have some outrageously successful events. So anybody that's in the Chicago area, we're going to be starting a 7-day series of workshops on the 21st out in Cary, Illinois, just a little northwest of you, right, Tim?
Well, it's just a little southeast of us. It's the next town southeast of Crystal Lake.
Okay, I Googled it, and my map program showed that it was northwest. That's interesting.
It's northwest of Chicago, but it's the next town to the southeast of us here.
Okay. So looking forward to be there. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. All right. I actually hadn't looked carefully, and I had them reversed. So, yeah, just down Highway 14.
Yep.
Cool.
It's where we used to host the group a couple of years ago.
Right. Fabulous.
And we're also exploring the options for some places in Evanston and Chicago and Naperville area to try and get that next week booked up to spread the tools to even more people.
Cool. That's fabulous. Well, we'll look forward to seeing how it all unfolds. Did you get that email I sent you, Tim, with a quote that I thought might be kind of fun to put in your blog from Einstein?
No, you mean today?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I actually sent it yesterday, but with the conversation we had the other day on the show about anger and how angry people were that you were dissing anger, and I came across a quote from Albert Einstein, and Einstein says, quote, "Anger dwells only in the bosom of fools." I thought that might be an opinion to add to your blog that Einstein had about anger. How much of a...
That would certainly stir up the people that didn't like it when I said anger is a useful tool as an alarm system. They didn't even like that.
Yeah.
So I'd really get a rise out of them if I said anger only resides in the bosom of fools.
Well, you wouldn't be saying it. You'd be quoting a genius on that one, and it might just be a fun one to put in there.
Well, I don't know where that went.
Only in the bosom of fools.
I don't know where that email went, but I'd be happy to have you send that to me again, if for no other reason than we can validate that I'm getting emails that you send.
Okay. I will see if I can get to it and ship it out to you one more time. So, Jeanie, do we have any questions in the chat room? Any thoughts?
Joe was asking to say the quote again from Einstein.
Oh, anger dwells only in the bosom of fools. Good old Albert. He was a pretty amazing guy. Pretty amazing. So we invite everybody to come join us in Chicago. Also, we've added, if you're ready to take your work to the next level, we've added a 9-day intensive to our intensive schedule for September. We're going to do a 9-day intuitive development, and that 9-day intuitive development will include, of course, intuitive development, and it's a practicum on having access to information without recourse to the mind. So that will be September the 16th to the 24th. We'll also cover why is this happening to me again. So we'll be doing forgiveness process work in that intensive. You know, the culture purposely brainwashes us against intuition because the culture doesn't really want us to know the truth. It would really like us to live in the lie. And in living in the lie, be controllable, be locked into things like hostility and fear, and be controllable. So what we're looking to do with that one is add the forgiveness process, and then we'll be doing still point breathing as well. So anybody that's ready to take things to the next level, we'd be delighted if you came to join us for intuitive development. Heartland Residential Workshop. It'll be 9 days, September the 16th to the 24th. We'll start on a Friday night, go through a week the following Saturday. And it'll be residential here at Heartland. We'd be delighted to have you join us.
So, Michael?
Sure.
The thing that struck me most last night in the talk, Laws of Living, was you were laying the foundation by discussing where reality lies and is created and what actually is in the world. And it's amazing to me still, no matter how many times I listen to these lectures, that it seems like I'm getting a different piece. I'm different when I'm hearing it. I get a different level of understanding. And a quote came across my desk from Guy Finley this morning that seemed to reinforce it. And he's talking about what it takes to be still. And he says, so the first thing to understand is that we don't need the world to stop. What we need to do is understand that the world whirling around us is the world of our own reactions. And that fits so powerfully with what you were talking about in the Laws of Living workshop, that I look out my eyes and I believe I'm seeing things that are solid and things that are real, and that what I see is exactly what everybody else sees. And that's part of what contributes to my getting upset when other people don't agree with me. Because It doesn't even enter my mind that I might be seeing and experiencing something radically different from what the person next to me is seeing and experiencing. So I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about that, the difference between actuality and reality, and how if I don't know that difference, it really sets me up to create a lot of havoc in my life.
Yeah, it takes a great deal of learning after being brainwashed all our lives that we're looking out through our eyes and seeing what's going on out there, instead of recognizing that when we look out through our eyes, we're looking at the contents of our minds, that our mind pretends to show us the world, but what it's really continuously showing us is our own content. And in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, an example I use is, I hold up a marker and ask how many people see the marker in my hand, and most everybody agrees, yes, I see the marker in your hand, and then I challenge them by offering that they're not seeing the same marker as anybody else in the room. Which people just go, come on, that's crazy. What are you talking about? Well, let's take it a step further. Let's imagine that we have a young man who as a kid, student, kindergarten to grade 8, small town, one-room school, and he spends his whole childhood with a teacher, Mom, who's an artist and into markers. And so he has this absolutely wonderful time, with Mom and learning the process of art and markers. So, many, many, many awesome hours with Mom in the marker world. And then let's imagine we've got another young man who is in the same situation in terms of the one-room school, small town, and as he grows, Mom uses markers in the classroom, but she tends to be kind of nasty. She loves to embarrass him. She loves to center him out, loves to show off how stupid he is. And every time he steps out of line, fires a marker at his head. On at least 2 occasions, him turning his head the wrong way, he ended up with eye injuries because it hit him in the eye. And so, of course, these 2 young men experience a marker when I hold a marker in my hand, but do they experience the same marker? And my offering is absolutely not. In no way, shape, or form do they experience the same marker. Each of them experience a totally and completely different marker. Unique output of our own mind. So there's the actual marker, actuality, and then what that marker resonates in us feeds us an image, a picture, a reality, and the conversion process is done in the human mind. If we listen to Einstein, if we listen to physicists, they tell us matter doesn't exist. I mean, you go to physicist after physicist after physicist, and they'll tell you that matter doesn't exist. So obviously, if matter doesn't exist, if the truth is there's no matter there, and you can go back 2,000 years ago and hear the man named Yeshua, they don't judge by appearances. Same thing. It doesn't exist as we see it. So when we recognize that matter doesn't exist, what we see and what's actually out there is this energetic movement of electrons, protons, neutrons, etc. There's no matter out there. So recognizing there's this movement of electrons, protons, and neutrons, we live in an energetic world, or what we could say was a digital world. And our eye receives light bouncing off of those digital bits of information, and we have an analog converter. We convert digital to analog. If you're not familiar, everybody's listening, if you're not familiar with the digital to analog idea, if you've got a digital watch, it just shows numbers, Right now, if you look at your digital watch and you're in Central Time, it's probably going to say something about, 1:32 or whatever it is. So there's going to be a 1, a colon, and 32. Information, that's all. If you have an analog watch, you have a face, you have hands, you have numbers, you have a picture, you have an image. So this amazing human device called a replicate mind has a converter box. Remember a couple of years ago in the TV people who control the FCC made a requirement that all television stations broadcast in digital. And most people had analog televisions. So people who had analog televisions couldn't watch these new digital signals. So the government said, well, we'll pay for your converter box, or we'll make a contribution of $100 toward you buying a converter box. So that converter was to convert the analog signal to digital so that the TV that normally worked off of analog was able to decode that picture. And so that is a similar thing to what we call our human mind is and does, is it converts this energetic pattern system into a series of images. And the images are all total and complete projections from brain cells. Nothing exists out there the way we see it. Now, of course, most people go, well, how come we don't all see something different then? Well, we've pretty much all got the same brain cells. There is some interesting documentation about some of the explorers who went down around the Cape of South America, and when they would, anchor their tall ships they'd take their rowboats and go in, and the natives would greet them, and when they got to understanding each other's communication, the natives wanted to know where they came from, because all the natives saw were these rowboats, and these guys just appear out of nowhere. And, of course, the explorers would look and point to their tall ship out on the ocean, anchored off the shore, and the natives couldn't see it. They didn't have the brain cells for something like a tall ship, so their brain did not generate that image. They had to build the brain cells. And when you look back into the ancient Aramaic, you see a man with an understanding of this principle who says, you know, you having eyes do not see, you having ears do not hear. What he's saying is that if we are brainwashed with hostility and fear around any given issue, we're never going to be able to even approach the truth of it. And the man named Yeshua says that his teaching is only for those who have the eyes and the ears to hear. So we could say in the context of our example that a tall ship is only for those who have the eyes and the ears for a tall ship. Otherwise, if you don't have the brain cells, you can't see the tall ship. There is a truth in the Aramaic that is so many light years beyond anything that's being taught in the world. And I mean anything that's being taught out of the Greek, out of the translations that come from the Aramaic, but those who didn't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, didn't have the brain cells, couldn't properly translate what was there to be translated. Use an example. Imagine that, Jim, for the workshop series we're going to do next week up there, imagine that, or 10 days or so up there, imagine that you hear from somebody from Russia that wants to come to the workshops. They're going to fly in, and let's imagine that there's somebody there that you know that is the best translator of Russian into English and English into Russian in the world. And you ask that person if they'll mind picking this fellow up at the airport, and, you know, they've got an extra room, and if they'd house him and take care of him, and he's very delighted to do that. And throughout the period of our workshops there, we got 7 days of workshops. We have just an awesome time with this guy. We get together several times through the week. We have fun, and after the workshops are over, he's getting ready to fly back. And the fellow who's the translator, because I don't speak any Russian, I asked him if he'll tell our new Russian friend that I think he's really cool. And so imagine that this fellow turns to our Russian friend and says, and Michael thinks you've got a low body temperature. He translated my words absolutely perfectly, but he didn't say a word about what I meant because I used an idiom. The Aramaic language is absolutely rife with idioms, and guess what? You can't translate an idiom. You've just got to know what it means. If you don't know what it means, you can't translate it. And there's so much, just so much that's lost. So when Yeshua talks about appearances, he's talking about mind and its images, and there's an indicator that will tell us when our mind is producing a reality that is not accurate about actuality. And that marker is any form of hostility or fear. If your mind is producing any form of hostility or fear, and let's just, we'll imagine we're in the classroom, and we'll ask the question, how many here have ever been accused of saying something you never said, of doing something you never did? Guaranteed everybody in the room will put their hands up. And then when I ask, and how many times does that happen to you? Once, twice, 3, 4, 10, 100, most people go infinity. So are all the people who've accused you of those things liars? And I point out, no, none of them. Well, there might be some liars in the group, but by and large, most of those people are telling the truth. They saw you say what they said you said. They saw you do what they said you did, even though it never happened. And most people go, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. How is that possible? Here's how it's possible. All somebody has to do is show up and fire brain cells that someone's in denial about. When they're in denial, there's going to be some form of hostility or fear attached to it. Notice that when somebody accused you of saying something you never said, of doing something you never did, they were in some form of hostility or fear. Why? Because every time hostility or fear accompanies the output of a human mind, or what we call the replicant mind, It is because the mind is using corrupt data to create its picture. So if you trigger those dissociated brain cells in someone, those that people have denied and dissociated from, they'll build a picture, and you will show up in their mind with their problem attached, and they'll swear that you said this and you did that, even though in actuality it never happened. In people's realities, most everything that happens never happened. Most everything that shows up in the mind. And 100% of the time, when there's some form of hostility or fear, it never happened. It's not outside of you. It's inside of you. So it takes great learning to catch the idea that reality is the output of our minds, and actuality is what's really going on in the world. And we have the option of exchanging reality for actuality. And actuality is something that we can begin to know when we're willing to forgive the realities that we overlay. It's kind of like we wrap our reality around an event. That's what somebody did when they accused you of saying something you never said, doing something you never did. They had a picture in their minds, and they wrapped that picture and covered you up with it, and you were no longer visible. So they really believed what their mind was telling them. And, of course, in hostility or fear, the mind is always a liar. Big, big piece of learning to get that one. It kind of addressed.
Yep, that's exactly what we were trying to get people to see and have examples from our lives. We got into the idea of filters, and the example we talked about last week where somebody from our group had another example, but I had one from last week where a woman was paid a very beautiful compliment, and she was hurt by it. She took offense from the comment, and when she repeated it to a friend, the friend tried to get her to see that this was a real serious compliment, and she didn't quite understand it, so she came into a session with me, and it took me 10 minutes to get her to understand how these very same words that she heard could be seen by her other friend and by me as a serious compliment, and yet she took it completely to mean the opposite.
Right.
So we had...
Yeah, everybody's got a reality all the time, and the thing to get is when our reality contains hostility or fear. You know, the young man who looks at the marker swears he just sees a marker, and he's in trauma all the times he was embarrassed and censored out and beat up by his mom. It was just a horrendous way to live. And so he believes that that's got to do with the marker, and the truth, it doesn't have to do with the marker. It has to do with the contents of his mind. And so what we're looking to do is to understand that and to get to the point where we recognize that all output from the mind, when it is based in hostility or fear, is simply not true. And then we can begin to change all content from the human mind that isn't true.
Well, that was one of the more powerful things for me, and I was getting it at a different level last night, was that because I have created these false realities, there is little to do other than recognize them. I don't have to go with a jackhammer and a blowtorch trying to dismantle them and take them apart. If I can simply see them from that angle, that perspective of the energy of love, they just fade away.
Well, and they fade away when we can access them fully and directly, and that's what the reality management worksheet is about, is accessing those things directly instead of just having an indirect relationship. So let's imagine that the kid or the young man, he's now 50 years of age, and I hold a marker up, and he's the one who was beat up, twice hit in the eye with the marker, went to the hospital, embarrassed, censored out, put down by mom. So he has an experience of a marker when I hold it up, and his experience is one of, perhaps being timid or afraid and traumatized. So all of that fear and trauma comes from inside of him. It doesn't belong to the marker in any way, shape, or form. But having dissociated from that, you can't touch that, the root of that directly. And the forgiveness process is how we go in and change that content that holds trauma in it. And as we change that content, everything starts to shift. Everything changes. So forgiveness is about directly accessing the underlying trauma, the underlying cause of the hostility or fear, and how to change that.
And for a powerful example of that, let's redirect people back to the August 2nd show with Lynn.
Absolutely.
I mean,
so we invite you to look at that or go to the website, www.whyagain.com, and on the right-hand side, the third link down is download worksheets. The third item down is a link to a show that we did a week or so ago with a very courageous young lady who was willing to just lay her life right out there on the line, just put her stuff right out there and very courageously work through it. And so we have an example of that in the worksheet that we did with her. You can listen to that. There's an MP3 in the archives on Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Or actually, I guess it's on Blog Talk that you can go to Blog Talk and download that. So, Jeanie, any questions in the chat room? Any thoughts?
No, nothing's going on. Everybody's just listening. And you can also, on our website, if you go to whyagain.com, up in the top right corner of every page, it'll say sample worksheet, and you click on that, and that's the August 2nd MP3 as well.
Yes. Cool. So forgiveness is the key of the game, and we're here to support you in learning it and taking it forward and doing it. And when you do, you will undo everything it has to do with drama and trauma in your life. Sadly,
Michael?
The tool of... Yes, sweetie?
We just got a caller raise their hand.
Awesome.
So area code 619, you're on the air.
Hi, Michael. It's Bev in San Diego.
Well, hey, Bev in San Diego. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. How are you?
Awesome. Blessed and highly favored.
I believe it.
Along. We're in the middle of laws of living, and we're just having a blast.
Well, I was calling just to share an incredibly fun, wonderful thing that happened yesterday to just kind of inspire everybody of how all these principles work.
Cool.
So I had to go to a tire store, and I didn't know where there was one because they're going out of business, but it's like a big national chain. And I couldn't find the number, and da-da-da-da, and I was just sitting in my truck going, how am I going to find out where it is? And at that very second, on the radio it said, are you looking for tires? We have all these great tire sales right now, and if you're trying to find the location for one of our stores, here's our toll-free number to call for any location you need. And I just grabbed my pen, wrote it down, and just laughed and laughed and laughed, and it connected me, I guess because of my area code, directly to the store that I was looking for, and the whole thing took less than maybe 30 seconds, and I had the phone number and the address.
Power of a vibration.
Isn't it just so cool?
I know it. That's the way the world is designed to work, and that's the way the world always works. Sadly, what most people are asking for, you go back in the Aramaic and they said, ask and you receive. But what most people are asking for, they're unconscious of their asking. And because they hold drama and trauma, what their continuous request is for more drama and trauma. But it's an unconscious request, and so they create that unconsciously. One of our workshops that we'll be doing in Chicago is on creating consciously. And when you start to create consciously, you begin to change the whole dynamic of asking for what you don't want. They said take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. And for almost 2,000 years, we've been working with a translation, much like you've got a low body temperature translation in response to telling somebody they're cool who doesn't know the idiom. The heart has been totally untranslatable in the West for almost 2,000 years. And so we didn't know how to understand what Yeshua was saying back then. But what he was saying was, be careful what you deny and dissociate from in yourself, because you create an unnatural condition, an unconscious, or a heart. And in that heart, you hide what you don't want, and that becomes your asking. So conscious asking, and life is designed to bang, 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 just bring it to us. So nice work. That's fabulous. Thanks for sharing it.
Yes, thank you so much. And then also, when is your workshop in Chicago? I have a friend that I thought would love to go.
If you go to the website, the flyer is on the website. We're going to start on the 21st. It's actually in Cary, Illinois, just a little bit north and west of Chicago.
Okay.
And just a little bit south and east of Crystal Lake. And so we're going to start next Sunday. We'll do the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop from noon until 3 o'clock. And then Monday night we're doing On Creating Consciously. Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. And then all day Saturday we're going to do MindShifters and Still Point Breathing. So.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to tell her about it.
Good,
I think she'll love it.
Have her introduce herself.
I will. Well, thank you for all your wonderful work, Michael. It just works so beautifully, and it's so reassuring and helpful, and I really appreciate you and Jeanie and the whole staff. Thank you.
Delighted to be on the team.
Thank you.
Just keep passing it on. That's the idea. That's what we're working toward doing. Every mind, heart, and being on the planet. I
do.
All right. Fabulous.
Okay.
And,
have a great day.
Probably next year we'll be heading west, so you're going to have to arrange for us to get to San Diego.
I'm going to do that. Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Fabulous.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
Have a blessed day. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And we have another hand up.
All right. Fabulous.
Area code 786. You're on the air.
Hi, Jeanie. This is Dayu. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Hello, Dayu. How are you, young lady?
I'm very good.
How are things in Chicago?
Well, they're great, and I don't know if you read my email, but I have already written to the Universalist Unitarian Church in Chicago at DuPage Universalist Unitarian Church. So hopefully we can get you placed here the following weekend after you do it in Gary. So that'll be the 28th.
That would be fabulous.
Yeah, so let's see how that goes. And then personally, on another note, I was sitting here this morning and I gained a huge insight. And I realized I had moved out of my friend's house because I saw her as being abusive to her children, and I saw her as having a hostility. And an amazing thing has happened since then. So this morning I woke up, and what came up was when I was a child, age 1.5, my mom and my sister left. And the hostility was mine. It was coming from that age. And I know that one of the, after the evaluation of the teacher's training, one of the things you said to keep working on was the hostility. So very interestingly, when I healed it, I did some clearing work, canceling goals, worksheets and stuff on it. What came up was such a ton of energy that I have subsequently, I've been saying I want to apply to the airline so I can fly here and there for free and, be able to come to Chicago, do my workshops, travel around the globe, that kind of thing. Well, I applied for 2 jobs this morning in addition to applying for you to speak at the Unitarian Church. So it was just incredible. I can't believe how much energy had been locked up in that hologram, in that holodyne within me, the hostility holodyne. And then I wrote to my friend, and I said I just had an insight, and I said, the hostility I saw in you was actually in me. But yesterday or the day before, I was in such a reaction, you know.
What a discovery.
Pardon me?
I said, what a discovery. That's awesome.
That is a really, really big discovery. I think I had to get to the nugget of where it had started. And when I got it, I said, what a waste of energy, you know. What an absolute waste of energy.
And you'll recall we had that. You'll recall we had that discussion. Well, what's this bringing up for you as well? Oh, nothing. I just want a more peaceful place to be. But obviously there were some nice gifts there for you. Yeah, there were. You know, it was interesting. So I wrote to my friend to thank her. I don't know how she's going to feel about it, but you know, I'm still not of a mind that I want to go back and stay with her or anything, because there's probably still more stuff to be healed, and I'm not totally in that place of love. But it just is a very nice feeling. I have been wanting to do these job applications for at least 6 months. And I can't believe it was like a whole, I don't know, maybe the doer part of myself, you know, the masculine energy, not the beer, but the doer, the one that goes out and does things. It got in harmony with the other parts, you know. It was amazing. It's just incredible. Very cool. If this thing works out, I hope to get a lot of free flying. And then I'll be coming and doing more of your workshops more easily and more frequently. Fabulous. Nice work. Great. Well, cool. Nice catch. And it's really awesome to have you share that process, because a lot of times, you know, people will give up. Well, you know, I did a worksheet on that, so I just can't figure this one out, so I'll just quit. And, you know, it's an ongoing process. I mean, you spent 17 days here doing just some awesomely deep work. And as you keep it moving, it's pretty fabulous, isn't it? Yeah. Well, Nene texted me and said that she's holding the space for me. And but you see, part of it was just the sheer overwhelm of it. It was just too overwhelming to stay in my friend's house. There was always something coming up, always something happening. So I needed to just be on my own to have the space to do the healing work. And I think that was a wise choice. But what I think the key for me was when you said that Nene had that insight at the airport when she saw somebody and then she realized, oh, that's how I treat my daughter. And you said to me, maybe you can look at how does this look like your life. It's one of those sentences that I don't like at the time that it is the question that I am most loved for when people get it, and most hated for when they don't. So. Yeah, exactly. So that was it. So I think I got a bit of it, but it came in deeper this morning. You know, the insights usually come when you wake up in the morning. You have your best, most insightful moments then, you know. And so it's nice work. Wonderful. So thank you. And I'll keep you posted on the 28th, you know, about the 28th. I'll probably be gone by then, but let's see if we can at least get it organized, because I'll probably leave after, you know, around the 22nd or so, right after your weekend in Gary. We'll see. Okay. So you're going to be doing still point breathing on the Saturday? On the Saturday, we'll do MindShifters and still point breathing, yes. Okay. Wonderful. Oh, I'm sure the people in Gary, Illinois are going to love that. That's if you're listening on the radio, guys, go for it. That is one of the best experiences you're ever going to have. Okay. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to hang up now. Okay. Bye. Alrighty, blessings. Have a blessed one. Bye-bye. Bye. Jeanie, any other comments in the chat room? Or?
No. Nothing else.
Are you there, Michael?
I certainly am, sir.
Well, as you said, that's an excellent catch on Deyu's part, and the idea that we had one of those last night in our group. The idea was a woman was doing a worksheet from the previous week, And she was getting irritated during this past week with somebody who was always worrying. And she was discussing it with her significant other, and he said, well, sometimes you're your own worst enemy. And she said, how? And she said, well, you're always worrying about things. So she had a tip in from her friend who said,
right,
this thing that's really bothering you about this other person is something you do all the time. And because she's been doing the worksheets, she was able to let it in, and she shared with us last night that it shocked her to realize that she really does a lot of worrying, and she carries a lot of tension in her body from the worrying. And as she started to do worksheets on that and dismantle it, she wasn't as irritated with the other person around her who was doing so much worrying.
Right. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Yep.
If my mind outputs a reality and there's some form of hostility or fear in it, now my mind will create a picture, as I say, an analog image that it's all about them. But the truth is, I'm the one who's feeling it, and you can't feel anybody else's. So it's a pretty fabulous thing to understand. Pretty fabulous.
Yep, it's phenomenal, and we're blessed to have the awareness, the questions to ask, and then the tools to apply to do something with it once we begin to see that it's been created by our own false impressions.
Yes. Yeah, it is an amazing thing to get to understand, and when you recognize that if something has been understood for thousands of years, and it's just been hidden away, it was just disappeared. And I think it's because there are those who would like to control others, and if you just hide away the way that others get free from control, then, you remember this guy 2,000 years ago said, know the truth will set you free. And most people think about, or many people think about his teaching, and they think they're getting all bound up in something. The truth is, it's the way to get loose of and out of bondage. But if you keep people in their hostility and fear, they're easy to control. So why give them a tool with which to get out of bondage? Disappear that tool. Get rid of it. Otherwise, you lose control. And, if you've got people right where you want them, why rock the boat? So if you know the tool of forgiveness, guess what? You get free of all hostility or fear, and you loosen yourself from bondage. And that old tactic is designed, keep them barefoot and pregnant, keep them down on the farm, keep them stupid, keep them dumbed down, and they'll always work as good slaves. Servitude, it's a wonderful thing, In fact, if you look in this country, most people think slavery's been abolished. Go read again, folks. Slavery hasn't been abolished in this country. If you read the Constitution, where there was supposedly this thing that said slavery's finished, read it again. You know what it says? It says involuntary slavery, involuntary servitude. In other words, you can still volunteer to be a slave if you want. And actually, there's in the ancient scriptures, there were two categories of people. There were free persons and there were bondservants. Those who didn't have the liberty to choose what to do with their own lives. Guess what they call a bondservant today? A bondservant is an employee. That's the modern updated word for bondservant. And we're designed to be at liberty in ourselves. And so that's where we're heading with this work. And those who would control want the captive to remain in captivity. And the average captive would say, people would never do that. People are fairer than that. Well, that's exactly what the captor wants the slave to think. Unless the captor wants to spend all kinds of money, keeping them in chains and bars and all that sort of thing, if you can just put the chains and the bars on their minds and make them think they're free. I forget who, one of the founding fathers said that, the most difficult prison to break out of was the one you didn't know you were in. And so time for a wake-up call. And we're here to wake up.
Well, Michael, Michael, how I sent you a set of quotes from the book Buddha's Brain, because it's research that's validating what you've been talking about for years in terms of the mind, filling in gaps in our perception. And, well, yesterday and today on National Public Radio, there was a story about a scientist who's trying to devise an experiment here at Fermilab in Chicago to test the hypothesis that the world we live in is only two-dimensional, and that our third dimension is more of an illusion or a delusion. And they use the theory based on what's happening in a hologram. So we have credit cards with little holograms on them, so they look 3D when you move them. And so the idea is even hard science these days is opening up to test the way in which our senses fool us into believing that what is not there is really there.
Yep. Yeah, it's time for a mass awakening, and it's interesting. There's a lot of conversation with the 2012 predictions out of the Mayan calendar, and the prediction from the Mayan calendar has nothing to do with the end of the world. It is the end of a phase in the calendar, nothing whatsoever to do with the end of the world. And that phase is a phase of control and dominance. The energetic shift on a planet-wide basis is toward ethics and morals. And so there are a lot of power structures that are simply crumbling, and they're crumbling because the energy is disappearing. The support, the control, to support the manipulation that's been happening on the planet for so long. It's time for that to be over. And it's time for people to have the liberty to pursue their lives. The Founding Fathers tried to get that one going 200 years ago. And you look how much of it is still same people they were resisting back then. And it's just time for us to wake up to who we are. And part of waking up is removing what we're not. And so the main thing we're here to support you in is forgiveness. Learning how to remove from your physiology, from every cell in your structure, from your mind, from your emotions, everything that never belonged. What never belonged in your mind, your body, your emotions? Any form of hostility or fear. Hostility or fear is just a marker that there's corrupt data in that part of your structure. And when you remove the corrupt data, guess what? You get to start and begin to have the best year yet of your eternal life. That's what we're here to support you having. Have a blessed week. Bring somebody to the show tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.